Good evening and welcome to Tuesday, November the 15th, 2022 School Board Regular Meeting. The time now is 6 o'clock. The school board would like to take this moment to respectfully acknowledge that we are residing on the traditional land of the Dene people. Our mission is to provide an excellent, equitable education in a safe, supportive environment to all students who will succeed and contribute to a diverse and changing society. Mr. Dorn will lead our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice President Dorn. Ms. Richardson, could I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Smith is expected. Colonel Alvarado's on Zoom. Colonel Siri is expected. Mr. Doran.
Here.
Mrs. Burnett.
I'm here.
Here.
Sorry, apologize.
Thank you. Mrs. Hardy.
Here.
Mrs. Matheson is excused. Miss Marati.
Here.
Mrs. Smith.
Here.
Mrs. Sanderson.
Here.
Thank you. The board has a quorum.
Next on our agenda is the 2022 ASAA First National Bowl Series Football Division II State Championships. The Lathrop High School Malamute football team recently won the 2022 Division II State Football Championships for the second year in a row. Luke Balash, head coach, will introduce the players and make the presentations.
Probably introduce them here. Are we going to go through and shake hands? Kind of done in the past? Okay.
Stand here.
Hello. So question be, we have an awards banquet in a week, can I give these out then? Or you want me, or I can go through, I can do them tonight. Got it. Hey, good evening. Before I get to these, just wanted to say a few words and thank you to the school board for having us here tonight. Quite a few of you have been instrumental in us being successful lately, have gone to bat for us in different circumstances, situations, including folks that aren't here tonight from school boards in the past. I tug on your ears occasionally for help and support. And I also wanted to say thank you to our community, tons of donors that give a lot, to our admin, especially Clarice Mingo and Rich Harrelson, who stepped in the gap big this year for us, and the whole staff at Lathrop who've been very supportive. Special group of young men, the ones that could make it here tonight are here. Between basketball and wrestling and all kinds of other things, there's a bunch of stuff going on, but managed to get some out tonight. This year's a pleasant surprise. I say every year's an adventure at Lathrop. We never know who we're going to have and how it's going to work, but this group really answered the bell and played great football, and brought home another title. It was pretty special, and really just a fun adventure together. A bunch of great dudes here, and so I will call up the ones who are here tonight to grab their certificate and walk down the line and shake some hands. First guy here was the Defensive State Player of the Year. He was a pleasant surprise, came up from the JV level, first year as a varsity player, ended up dominating, being great. His name is Karub Adeniran. Yeah, walk. Keep going. Some great guys that aren't here tonight I wish I could talk about, but we'll go fast. a first-year player for us, was our starting tight end, and played a lot of other stuff as well, Riley Corbett. One of our young linemen who's going to be coming back next year with big expectations, Dylan Duncan. Right. One of the twin brothers, Aaron Johnson. This is the older twin brother. No, he's the older twin brother? I got it backwards. He's the bigger big brother, Jacob Johnson. Let's see here. John Levy. We asked John to make the move to fullback this year, which is a much less glorifying position than a running back, but he took it for the team, did a great job. Led the way. Troy Lucero. Yes. Good job. Nope. Getting there. Double checking, making sure I don't miss any of them. Kevin Spears. Come on, Kevin. Geronimo Talo. Now, Kevin's one of our offensive linemen, so is Geronimo. Geronimo's just a sophomore. One of those guys we're excited to be back next year, so we can do something else again. One of two quarterbacks, Solomon Wade. If you followed us on the sports page, he and another quarterback, we actually had two quarterbacks, we rotated them every series because they were both varsity level dudes and got a chance to play, and the other one's Jenner Webb. Then our second set of twins here, his twin brother Cody Webb. Cody's our speaking captain of all of our games. He's also one of the best clarinet players in the state. Little claim to fame. 4 days after the state championship game, he was on stage with the world-class pianist giving a concert. Did I miss any? One of our assistant coaches, Clifton Scroggins, is here. Wave at us, Cliff. Oh! And the assistant state coach of the year, Coach Zodi. Nathan Zodi right there. I think that's it. Hey, thanks.
Yay! Another big shout out to our young players. They're taking home the championship for our district. We're very proud of you. We thank you for your commitment and dedication and how you continue to show up and play the game and give it your best. Again, congratulations. Agenda. I move to adopt the agenda with consent items.
Second.
We'll do the motion. Move to adopt the agenda with consent items.
Second.
Can I, oh. And it's been moved and seconded. Do I get the vote? Can I have the vote, Ms. Richardson? Sorry.
Colonel Alvarado,
Here.
we're on the vote for the consent agenda.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Colonel Suri,
Yes.
Mrs. Burnett,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Hardy,
Yes.
Miss Marati,
Yes.
Mr. Doran,
Yes.
Mrs. Sanderson,
Yes.
motion carried.
So the consent agenda items are marked with an asterisk and are considered routine items, not requiring public discussion by the school board unless removed from the consent agenda. Asterisk items will be automatically approved when the agenda is adopted. Questions concerning these items should be directed to the administration before the meeting. If the superintendent or a member of the public wishes to have an item removed from the consent agenda, a request must be made to the board member anytime prior to the start of the meeting. The board member has the discretion to accept or deny the request. Only board members may remove the item from the consent agenda. If an item is removed from the consent agenda, it shall be considered separately as the last item of new business. Asterisk items will be then adopted. Any person wishing to speak on an agenda action. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Mullane, would you please read our consent agenda?
Yes. The board's approved Randy Smith Middle School's request to fundraise approximately $2,000 by selling thank you plaques to help offset the cost of the new singlets and team hoodies for the wrestling team. Accepted the donation of $2,000 from EOSC Welfare Fund to Ben Eielson Junior Senior High School to support the school's tennis team. Accepted the donation of $1,000 from Golden Pediatrics Therapy LLC to Tanana Middle School to support the school's boys and girls sports team. Accepted the donation of $1,000 from Power and Transmission Incorporated to Tanana Middle School to support the school's boys and girls sports team. Accepted a donation of $2,000 from Keller Williams Alaska Group Realtors to Tanana Middle School to support the school's boys basketball team. Accepted the donation of $4,500 from Hale and Associates Incorporated to Tanana Middle School to support the school boys and girls C team, junior varsity, and varsity volleyball teams. Accepted the donation of $2,000 from the American Legion C, Russell Huber Post 57 to West Valley High School to support the school's JROTC drill program. Accepted the monthly management reports of October 2022. Approved the personnel action reports for the period October 10th through November 4th, 2022. Approved the minutes from September 6th and October 18th, 2022 regular meetings and October 3rd and 31st, 2022 special meetings as submitted. Acknowledge the personnel information report for the period October 21st through November 4th, 2022. Acknowledge the budget transfer report for period October 1st through October 31st, 2022. Acknowledge the board's reading file and acknowledge the board's coming events and meeting announcements.
Thank you, Ms. Moline. Now we have the public comments and report on non-agenda items. Public comment on non-agenda items include public comments and input ideas and suggestions are welcome on salaries, benefits, and other contractual items regarding the Education Support Staff Association, ESSA, and Fairbanks Education Association, FEA. Our value is to engage with students, families, staff, and the community to support student success. Public comment on reports or non-agenda items are limited to 2 minutes per person for a maximum of 1 hour. People who have signed up in advance to the school board office to testify in person or by Zoom will be called upon first. If the time remains, anyone else who is in person will be invited to testify until the 1 hour time limit has been reached. A person testifying should state their full name, spelling their last name, their city and residence of record. Board members may ask questions for clarifications. Although there is time at the end of each meeting for school board and chief administrator comments, some concerns may not be able to make addressed immediately, as additional information may be needed to gather. Going to public comment, we have signed up tonight. The first person is Sandy Ryan. Oh, go ahead, Ms. Ryan. If you state your name and your residence, please. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Sandy Ryan, a 29-year teacher of mathematics and computer science here in Fairbanks, and I currently serve as the Fairbanks Education Association president. I reside in Fairbanks. My last name is spelt R-Y-A-N. First, I would like to take a moment to say thank you to all education support staff in Fairbanks, North Scarborough School District. Thank you for your work, your dedication, and devotion to our students. Happy ESP Day tomorrow. Second, I would like to let you as the school district board know that FEA is currently holding an election for president. This is my final year as the FEA president, and we have 2 outstanding candidates running. Danette Peterson, currently the FEA vice president, co-chair of our negotiations team, founder and head cheerleader for the FEA Teachers Mentor Program, and a teacher at Hutchinson High School. Jessica Iglesias is a FEA board member, former chair of our FEA Sick Leave Bank, member of the Education Excellence for Teachers and Students Committee, and member of the Joint Healthcare Committee. She's a teacher at Midnight Sun Elementary. I can't tell you how very happy I am that FEA will be in very capable and skilled hands when the gavel goes down on my last day in July. Finally, I ask for your help this evening for the good of our school district to get the very best results during the superintendent search, and of course, the very best for the students impacted by the decisions being made. Please direct your bargaining team to negotiate with caring and compassion. Your employees are weary. They want to say proudly that they've worked for the very best district in the state, the Fairbanks North Scarborough School District, but they simply cannot do that anymore. They feel disrespected and dismissed. You can help make a difference. Thank you for your time.
Are there any comments, questions from the board? Ms. Hardy?
Are there specific actions that you believe should be taken that would demonstrate that respect or caring and compassion?
Yes, they're a long list, and I think it's more than I can detail tonight. However, when members attend negotiation sessions, what I normally hear is really directed to the tone and the voice in the room. And so we know, we believe that people really want the very best, but it's just not being telegraphed, nor is it necessarily being demonstrated in some of the offers that come across the table.
Ms. Ryan, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next up to the podium is Danielle Logan. State your name, residence area, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Danielle Logan, and I reside in Fairbanks, and my last name is Logan. As you have heard, ESSA and the district have both declared that we are at a mutual impasse. Tomorrow, November 16th, is ESP Day. This is where we recognize our wonderful support staff. I recommend that you, as a board members, make a concrete effort to understand what our district support staff do and the integral role we play. Schools don't run without ESPs, and the students can't learn without us. We are often the first face the student sees when they go to school and the last face they see when we leave. We are integral for our students, teachers, and schools, and deserve your attention. Right now, our ESPs are not feeling very supported, valued, or respected. Though, for the last 2 years, they've been asked to do more with less, when some support staff already start at less than $15 per hour. The 2 things that are important that could help with retention are safety and training language. As it is, our new hires are put into a classroom with no training and 30 minutes of onboarding. Is this how we train our educators to work with our most intensive needs students? It is today. Our members don't feel safe, so we are asking for better safety language. Offering a $2,000 hiring bonus to new special educator staff feels like a slap in the face to our current members who have been around for a while, those who made it through COVID, who were the first back into the classes with students who take the most care and attention. To them, they feel like they don't matter today. We are headed for mediation. I ask that you please direct your bargaining team to look at the training and safety language.
Any questions from the board? Thank you, Ms. Logan, for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Maria Berger. If I'm hopefully not spelling your name correctly or pronouncing it correctly, or you're online.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. State your name and spell your last name and your place of your area of residence, and you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. And I can't figure out how to turn my video on, so you'll have to look at my dog. So hello, my name's Maria Berger. My last name is spelled B-E-R-G-E-R, and I live in Fairbanks. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My comments relate to the 2021 school climate survey results that Dr. Ellisott presented to the board at the September 20th meeting, and in particular, the consistently lower percentages of positive responses from African American students, staff, and parents. Although the disparities between African American and non-African American respondents were typically just a few percentage points when looking at the overall results for each domain, responses to individual survey items revealed differences of 10 to more than 20 percentage points between African American and non-African American respondents. Some of the largest gaps were on items asking about the degree to which instructional materials reflect respondents' cultural background, ethnicity, and identity, the degree to which the school communicates respect for all cultures, and the degree to which discipline is applied fairly and consistently to all students. In addressing the disparities revealed in the survey results, I trust and hope that the district will ensure that the African American students, staff, and parents have a significant and meaningful voice in determining how to proceed. I also encourage the board members to reread the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion report submitted to the board by RMG Consulting in August of 2020. Among the report's recommendations were that district leaders participate in trainings on topics such as creating an inclusive school culture and using school climate survey results to address areas of deficiency and inform professional development opportunities. Although the results are unfortunate, they provide important information and present an opportunity for the board and administration to demonstrate that you're willing to back up with actions your stated commitment to ensuring an excellent and equitable education for each and every student. Please show your students, staff, parents, and community that the district, which prides itself on being data-driven, is willing to actually use the data that is collected to address issues of concern and to provide the resources and leadership to see those efforts through. Thank you for your time and your work on behalf of the district.
That's time. Thank you, Ms. Bergson, for your testimony. Are there any questions from the board? Seeing none, thank you again.
Thank you.
Next on our speaking list is Kelly Scanlon. Would you please come to the podium, state your name, spell your last name, and resident area, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name's Kelly Scanlon, Scanlon, and I reside in Fairbanks. I'm here testifying today as a parent of a Lathrop High School student and as a secondary educator in the district. I want to thank the Lathrop administration and staff and the district's team for how they handled and kept families aware of the active shooter situation. But tonight I want to talk about the day after. I asked my daughter what was talked about the next day during school, and her 16-year-old perception was that we didn't talk about it, and it's okay, Mom, these things happen. Well, last time I checked, never have I in 20 years had armed police running through my school with guns drawn, looking for active shooters room by room. So I know these things don't just happen. I'm concerned about how we dealt with this traumatic experience. First, I want us to take notice that everyone came back the next day. Students, staff, administrators. Everyone came back because they trusted each other enough to feel safe coming back through those doors the next morning. But I think we as adults did not do the kids justice on this one. Yes, there was a counseling team available, but I'm going to tell you that most high school students are not going to take advantage of talking with someone they don't know about something they don't know how to talk about. They want to talk with those of us that are with them every day, those of us that have that relationship. But those of us who should be able to unpack the situation and talk about it in a meaningful way have not been given any training on what we should say to students. So many teachers and staff are afraid to say anything because they don't want to get in trouble for saying the wrong thing. It's time for our district to train their first responders, which is us, the staff on the ground, in the schools working directly with students. If we're expected to carry this emotional load, both personally and professionally, we cannot do it on our own. We need a plan. Thank you for your time.
Any questions for Ms. Scanlon? I want to thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to come forward at this time and testify? Seeing none, public testimony is now closed. Next, do we have anybody from the borough to present their report? I don't think we do, so we're going to move on to item E, which would bring you to the president's report. And I actually have one for you. This week I met, I'm just reading my notes, so it may not sound like a report, but this week I met with our chief administrator to set agendas and talk strategies for the future. Then I also met with Vice President Tim Doran to talk about strategies concerning our board moving forward as a team. I was excited to join the VIP tour for North Pole High School on Monday. The tour began at 9:40 a.m., which I was hopefully to still be asleep, but that didn't work out, so had to get to the tour. It provided us with some time to talk to school partners who could partner with North Pole community and allow us to meet staff and students. Several teachers invited us to join their classes. We interacted with students or just observed the activity that they were doing. We spent between 5 to 10 minutes in each classroom visiting with students as they shared about what they were learning. Ms. Beline, North Pole High School principal, has provided the tour with groups of excellent opportunities to view CTE classes in action. Got to visit the welding class where sparks were flying all over the place in their little booths as they were madly welding something. But we know that those students who take those classes, actually go on in our workforce and accomplish great things. I visited the Travis VC's, he's the automotive instructor now at North Pole High School, and got to see carburetors being ripped apart and cleaned and lawnmower motors being put back together. And we walked in on the class as Mr. VC was explaining to his students about, how do you maintain a job to maintain your high-end vehicle. So he had a budget up on the board, and apparently this budget had been marked out several times because they were giving up things like plumbing. They went to a dry cabin because they really wanted to hold on to that truck. One student said, though, nope, not going to happen. I need plumbing. And he said he would have to get a little hoopty to drive. But he was basically working a budget and showing them how relevant it was and how their job in the career field of automotives, as they work a budget, they could have an apartment, they could have a cell phone or an app, maybe, and a burner phone. So he made it very relevant to the students. We visited Mr. Slago's class where we saw kids disassembling coffee makers and cuckoo clocks and CD players. I always wanted to do that. Went into the coding class. I think that's Ms. Wade's class. So her class basically used instruction. Then they did a digital print of the model that they wanted to work. And we were given marbles to go and put in the model to see how the marble rolled out. And it was all done digitally. And then they made a physical model, which was pretty cool. And at 10 a.m., our culinary arts host us a really great lunch. Mr. Panningham and his students provided lunch, tomato bisque, a whole bunch of great stuff. But what took it for me was our own Olivia Smith did an awesome pumpkin mousse, and I want the recipe for that. On the 19th, I'll be speaking to NAACP about some goals for the district and how we're moving forward with some things. And as November is the time that we pause, and we're thankful to spend time with our family and friends, and the food drives that are going on in our community, because that's going to be the food that's going to feed people who are in need. Our community partners as they prepare hot meals for those who are in need. I want to take this time also to thank the two veterans that sat on this board, Maggie Madison and Aaron Marati, for their service to our country. And the final comments for me is Lathrop High School administrators, Ms. Swing, Ms. Mingo, Ms. King, and the staff. Like Ms. Scallion, this board was off being trained, but we got texts about what was going on. And it's important to me to know that our staff maintained their training. They did what they needed to do. It's important to me to know that the next day, students came back, staff came back. But we do have to go further to debrief our students. And finally, the world we're living in makes these things possible. But as we work together, not only as a board, but as a community and as administrators, students, and staff, that's what makes the world a better place. And we see it demonstrated in our district every day. So with that, That's the end of my report. Thank you. Now we move on to the Chief School Administrator's report.
Thank you, President Sanderson. And I would like to begin my report with an appreciation to the Lathrop High School administration team. A couple of weeks ago, we fell victim of a cruel scam. And the Lathrop leadership acted decisively and exactly as they had practiced and trained, even though they may not have had all the information, they knew that they needed to respond, and they did. They supported law enforcement in their work. All the staff and students did exactly as they had practiced, and the teachers and staff at Hunter and Ryan and Barnett, when they were called to go into a lockdown, that's exactly what they did, exactly like they'd practiced, and everyone moved like they should. I think that speaks volume of our school staff and our students and their preparedness in the event that this was, in fact, a credible threat. But finally, I want to not finally, but next, I want to give my deepest appreciation to our law enforcement partners. It was 2 minutes from the time they got the initial call until they showed up at Lathrop High School ready to protect our children and our staff. I don't know if there's records kept, but to me, that's a pretty quick response. They did a phenomenal job of assessing the situation and keeping sure that our children and our neighbors and friends were safe in the event of any situation. So I just can't thank them enough, and they responded from the far-flung areas of the borough. We had North Pole police here, we had university police, all ready to respond and protect. So thank you to them. And then I personally want to thank our district office team, who we are a very small and lean team, but they did a phenomenal job. Assistant Superintendents Luke Meinert and Kate LaPlante sprung into action. We're on the phone and talking regularly with the important people getting information. And then Rebecca Herbie, Executive Director of Communications, was managing several different communication platforms, trying to get accurate information. And within about 35 minutes, had accurate information in a number of different platforms to family members and community members across the borough. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You do us proud. And then finally, an appreciation to Erin Poland. Every day I appreciate that woman. Every day I appreciate her more. And I don't know that I appreciated her more ever than on that day when she handled the phones that were going crazy and information was flying from every direction. She was patient and professional and handled the situation and supported families and staff so well. So thank you, Erin, for that. And finally, there was some concern mentioned earlier in public testimony about how we deal with the aftermath, whether it's real or perceived. There is an aftermath. And we have begun internal conversations about what our Student Support Services Department can offer teachers in the way of training, possibly documents that will help them guide students through a conversation following whatever traumatic event they're facing. So those are learning some lessons in our debrief with law enforcement following the event. The conversation was what we did really well, and we did a lot of things really well. And then what can we do better, and what can we do different? So that was the positive side of this, is that we got to practice and find ways to do better and different if for any reason we're faced with that kind of tragedy again. So thank you to our community members for for weathering that event. Next, I want to talk about our strategic plan and our strategic goal of student success. We are doing in our district some nationally recognized good work in the area of student achievement and closing the gap in student achievement. In that Denali Elementary School was awarded the National ESEA Distinguished School Award, and they won that award in Category 2, which is the category that is for schools that are significantly closing the achievement gap. So Denali started their Walk to Read program at the beginning of this year, and the progress monitoring data is astounding. The student growth in just the first quarter, almost coming into the second quarter of the year, has been absolutely staggering. So it's a well-deserved recognition on the part of Principal Becky Zivero and the team at Denali Elementary School. And in communicating with Becky, if you know her, she's a very humble and capable leader, and she said it's the whole team. It's everybody on board working in unison to make it happen. So there are some really phenomenal some phenomenal student success happening across our district, and I wanted to acknowledge Denali and their strides that way. With that, there's also areas across our district for plenty of growth. Some of you may have seen the AK Star summative assessment scores that came out this week, and it's clear that there's room for growth. I will say, however, students in the Fairbanks School District overall scored higher compared to their peers across the state. In the English language arts area, 29% of students around the state scored advanced or proficient, and in FNSBSD, 32% overall, so slightly higher. And in math, 23% of the students in the state scored proficient or above, advanced or proficient in math, and slightly higher in Fairbanks with 25%. There is a link on our webpage that will give you the grade by grade breakdown and more details in how we compare across the state to different districts. But with that, it's clear there's plenty of work to do, and we're digging in to do it. We're committed to seeing those scores change. But also I wanted to note that each building leader and building leadership team is going to take this data, add it to data that they have within their building, other data points, to look at each individual student and see where they are and what they can do to bring them further along in their academic success. So this particular piece of information is one data point that our educational leaders use in the overall picture of how students are moving towards their academic career here in Fairbanks. And with that, that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Ms. Moline. Any questions? Thanks. Next is the Durham Transportation Contract Amendment Approval. Vote on contract changes are before the board for approval. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve the changes in the Durham Transportation Contract.
Seconded?
Okay, it's been moved in second. Nope. Are there any comments from the administration?
Nothing further. I think we've covered it in our last report, and you've followed along with us on this journey, so we don't have anything further to add right now.
Does anyone in the public have any comments? So seeing none, back to the board. Mr. Dorn?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. I'm ass- Am I correct that our contract has gone through legal review with our attorney or?
Yes, our attorney did look at we had a couple of different attorneys look at it.
Can I continue or? No?
You can have a follow-up, Mr. Dorn.
And I know one question as we're looking, and I think you've worked really hard on Durham has primary responsibility. They're hiring the driver. Are we, by moving to a van piece of this, in any liability to the district? Or is that very similar to what Durham takes for liability on the buses if there's an accident or anything like that? That's all, they have that liability, or is that something that comes back to the district?
They do carry liability insurance, and I'll have is Andy. Okay, Andy's going to talk a little bit more about that coverage and the insurance coverage that we do have.
Yeah, so the answer to your question, Mr. Dorn, is yes, it is no different. The district has liability in the running of the regular school buses. However, it would be very rare the circumstance that we would get into that territory with the amount of coverage, liability coverage that Durham carries to cover their operations and the liability that goes with those operations. So no fundamental change in an increase in liability to the district. It's status quo compared to running buses that we're doing every day. And Durham is carrying a significant amount of coverage to cover those risks involved with what they do every day.
Do a specific follow-up to that.
Yes, please.
So we have that for buses. Vans have a little different standard, of safety standard, et cetera, but we have the same, and Durham has that full liability coverage on those too.
That's correct.
Thank you. If I can get back in the queue.
Erin?
Thank you. Well, I empathize with families feeling the burden of Durham's bus driver shortage. I also know that, and I understand that this is legally allowed. Both DEED and DMV, experts in student transportation, they've deemed this an unsafe option. And since student safety is my top priority, and since experts in the area have warned against it, I cannot support this amendment. We can't fix a current problem with another problem. So I recommend going back to the drawing board and solving the solution in a way that is safe for our students.
Mr. DeGraw. Oh,
Mr. Dorn, did you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I had two more on this
Okay.
topic. Wanted to check in terms of, and I know you had reported this earlier, that the deed conversation with transportation, they were not, I believe, several months ago when this came, you were bringing it up and exploring it. They were, I guess, where they are now, are they approving it? Are they saying, yeah, go ahead with it, see where we're at with that?
so in our as I said earlier, in our conversation with Deed, it was long and involved, and we talked about a lot of different things. I just came straight out and said, "Is this illegal?" And they said, "There's nothing illegal about it." They had concerns at the federal level. I said, "It's happening all over the country, so obviously the feds don't have any problem with it." I said, "What is it?" And it boiled down to it's just never been done before. So while it's not illegal, and they say they told me in the meeting, if the board wants to do it, there's nothing illegal about it. They just don't. They have no experience in it, and so they can't recommend it because they don't know. So that's where it was left with deed. And they just flat out in the meeting said, if the board wants to move that way, there's nothing illegal about it.
So as a follow-up on that, there's no risk of state reimbursement for the transportation allocation that we get. That's
No,
not
it
in
does not
jeopardy at
put
all.
that in jeopardy. And Mr. DeGraw can talk more about this, but their contribution from that state doesn't cover all of our transportation needs anyway. So it wouldn't be covering our van plan. So, Mr. DeGraw, you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, correct. It does not impact in any way our state transportation grant that we receive. And if I may, I'd appreciate the opportunity to address the safety issue that's been talked about. Is that okay, President Sanderson?
Go ahead, Mr.
Okay.
McBride.
So there's
Could I
several
just
layers
get a
to the
clarification
safety.
before it gets into safety?
Hold it just a second. What was that, Mr. Dorr?
Just a clarification on the finance piece. So even if the transportation grant can be used to pay for buses or vans in this regard.
Yeah, we can get further clarification for you, sir, but to Ms. Maline's point, where our expenditures far exceed our transportation grant, this would be covered in that area. But we can get further clarification about what eligible expenditures, what it's meant by eligible expenditures. It's a lengthy answer that I can give you in detail in writing.
And just to add to that, if I may, fund balance in the transportation account would be allowed to cover these activities.
So just through the chair, if you can get that clarification, particularly in the years ahead, in case we get adequate funding for transportation, that there's not a part of our transportation plan that would not be covered. So it would be good to get that at some point. Thank you.
Ms. Burnett?
Oh, there we go. Now it's working. Vans are not allowed for student transportation under the Durham contract. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct, Ms. Burnett.
Okay, that was just something that we had gotten mailed to us. I just wanted clarification on that. Thank you.
So if we could just clarify the safety issue that was mentioned earlier. Mr. DeGraw, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so there's several layers to that response to that topic. One is it's important to recognize that this is not reinventing any kind of wheel. This is being done across many locations nationwide. There are vehicles of this nature transporting students all over the country. Okay, so I think the statement, this is putting students in an unsafe environment, I vehemently disagree with. Okay, are passenger vehicles as safe as school buses? No, they're not. However, we as a district have the obligation to turn over every rock and find alternative solutions to help the students and families in our district to help get their students to school. Along with that, in the realm of safety, is what are students, what environments are they in the lack of transportation to be able to get to school? There's many layers of that. We've heard anecdotally that students are being permanently homeschooled because of a lack of transportation in far-reaching areas of our district. We know that when the burden of parents getting their students to school is placed on them on a daily basis, most days they might be able to, they're able to get their students to school. Life occurs and challenges pop up unexpectedly, and random one-offs of students not being able to get to school because their parents, things pop up and they're unable to do so. Talking about the increased number of cars and vehicles on the roads transporting students longer distances that very well might not be maintained to the same standards that these minivans will be maintained at by Durham. That would be a safety issue as well. So, you know, we don't dispute the fact that the minivans are less safe than a school bus, but we maintain strongly that this is not an unsafe environment for students to be transported to school. And in the absence of these, you know, we'll be able to supplement the services to many of our far-reaching areas where families are having to drive long distances, and it is an extreme burden. It's changing work schedules. It's a big deal. And so, you know, what situations are those students being placed in the absence of consistent regular service? So, yeah, so we feel strongly that we're not putting students in harm's way with this alternative solution.
Ms. Smith?
And if President Sanderson, if we could have Mr. Hinton provide some specifics on the services that we'll be able to provide to families.
Go ahead, Mr. Hinton, and then we'll have Ms. Smith.
Yeah, so it's important to recognize that we currently use alternatives to school buses, and we have traditionally done that. We have students that ride to school in taxis every day, and we've done that for years because it's not always feasible to get a school bus to every student, especially our homeless and our foster care students. So one of the things these vans do is it provides immediate, stable, and dedicated routing for those students, so they're not calling a taxi in the morning and hoping that the taxi's available to come get them. We've heard anecdotal stories from families where, like, they're calling a taxi, but there's not one available for them because it's a high demand time. Providing them a dedicated route with dedicated route sheets so that those students, and also just noting the nature of our homeless students, they tend to move around a lot. It's just the nature of being homeless. Well, this is a transportation system that follows them, that's tailor-made for them, as opposed to putting them on a regular route or a sped route that doesn't change day to day based off the student's needs, whereas a dedicated passenger vehicle dedicated for them does shift with their needs. Wherever they end up the night before, we can go get them. It's taking some of those federal program students who are on our sped buses when we can fit them in because they're out of attendance area. These buses that are crisscrossing the district, well, putting them on in a passenger vehicle, it shortens everyone's ride time. It also decreases the length of those sped routes so they can focus on serving our sped students, and it improves on-time performance for some of those routes because the routes aren't butting up against each other because we're extending them and crisscrossing the district doing it. It provides release to families in further out areas like Mr. DeGraw was talking about. But there's also, I mean, those are like the main, like, you know, like when we're talking about safety and just like the services being delivered to students. But like they also provide opportunities for us that are like not as dire a need, but it's still a benefit to the district if sports teams like don't have to miss instructional time because they have to leave a few hours before school lets out because I need the bus to be back doing its home to school route. So they're missing less instructional time if they can be transported in these vans that are available. When we're looking at small shuttles between schools, when we're only talking about a handful of students moving between schools, it's more efficient to use one of these instead of a bus across town. These are just added value we get from the system, and we could continue to develop our options from there. But I just want to point out on the safety aspect that this is safer than, like, we're not doing anything unsafe, but the alternatives that are currently available, that we are currently using, this is comparable, if not safer, than what we are currently doing. Putting a student on the MAX transit system is an uncontrolled environment. Putting a student in a taxi cab, this is a dedicated transportation system for students as opposed to a taxi where it's incidental that student transportation is. But, all right, that's it.
And I would just add to that, if a family in the school district feels that this is an unsafe option for them, there is no requirement to take advantage of these services. So definitely nothing, compulsory in nature. If the family would like to take advantage of these added services, great. If they feel it's unsafe, they just can continue to transport their children themselves. So.
Thank you, Mr. DeGrom, Mr. Hinton. Ms. Smith?
I'd like to speak in support of approving the contract. I'd like to remind the board and the public that not too long ago, we asked every student in this entire district to be transported in a personal passenger vehicle to school every other week. And we deemed it quite safe. And as a person who delivers 11 children to 4 different schools every single day and picks them up and brings them back, that created an excessively unsafe situation. The every other week bus was a disaster. And I cannot express how much I truly, truly appreciate the solution that has been offered to that this year. It's not a perfect solution, but the environment around the school buildings is so much safer in the morning and in the afternoon, without the congestion of every single student arriving to school in their own personal passenger vehicle. And as Mr. DeGraw said, this is a totally optional service. No one's forcing anyone's kid into a minivan to drive to school. So parents in our Alaska state statute have the right to make the decision about their children. And this is a service that we can offer that is alleviating a desperate pain in our community of students who want to attend our schools, who want to be in person and are not able to. And it's an equity issue. These students are not receiving the education services that they deserve because we're making the decision for them that something that has been deemed safe by multiple transportation safety experts is not safe. So I think that it's safe if, I won't say if they were offering a van to come to my house to pick up my kids, I would put them on it. I would still drive them myself. But if that was my only option and I really needed that help, I wouldn't feel less safe about a van than I would about a bus. And so I definitely support this, and I don't understand how the board can not support it when we asked last year every student to be transported in a personal vehicle that was not inspected, not driven by any special trained person, just everyday persons on the street.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. I have Ms. Smith, Ms. Hardy, and then Mr. Duran.
I'm not sure I know how to address this. I think it's through the chair. I just wanted to ask clarification. Would the vans be able to be used by students and coaches for traveling from one school to another? Like for, I know swimming, it's usually a small number of people. If there were like 4 swimmers who needed to just go to a different place in a van rather than a bus, would that be a thing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hardy?
And I think this is probably through the chair too. And kind of first, like initially, I was really supportive of this plan. I even mentioned it during my campaigning. I like out of the box thinking and trying to solve the problem. And more right now, one of my reservations is we were emailed something today, and I don't know confidentiality, how much we can say on that, but it was a dump of information that wasn't provided to the board and only given to us a few hours prior to this meeting. And I'm somebody who likes to go through information and digest it. And I asked, was this provided to the prior board? Maybe it's because I'm a new board member, but that wasn't provided to the board at any point prior. And so it makes it very hard for me to feel like I'm doing my due diligence to have fully digested all of that information and be able to ask through email or other things these questions that I now have. And that's frustrating for me as a board member, because I was entrusted with a great amount of public trust. And like Ms. Smith said, yes, we put kids on buses, we put kids in personal vehicles last year every day, but that parent is assuming that responsibility and that level of risk. As a board member, and I keep my kids' pictures right here, I remember that I'm making decisions that don't just affect my children, because I'm not putting them on a bus, I'm not putting them in these vans, they affect the entire district's children, and that is a level higher and above than we ask students to drive every single day. So I want to make sure that I've done my due diligence. And it's very hard to do that when I've been blindsided with questions from an actual lawyer saying, here are things, and knowing that that was provided in August, but not provided to the board. I mean, kind of, I'd like to know why that was, or is there a way that we can have more time then to digest it? I don't like that now we're voting down something when we could have had more time. I have other questions, but I don't know if that are specific questions.
But the information that we've been provided all along, the information from our chief administrator, from Mr. DeGraw, from Mr. Hinton, they have supplied us with information. So I'm not sure what we do. Any other comment?
Put me back in the queue.
Ms. Smith?
I was just wanted to address the document that was sent to us. I was also concerned because the first time I saw it was when I sat down here. You know, I'm often doing a flurry of work in order to be able to get here. And so just in the future, but once I actually read through that document and I realized that it's just notes about the contract language and advice. It doesn't really bring up any real concern. It doesn't materially change the contract. I mean, I read the document and I'm still okay with voting for the contract.
So if I might just add a few comments.
Go ahead, Ms. Mullane, thank you.
Mr. Dorn asked earlier if we had consulted counsel, and we did. And as a part of the process, which is our job, we went back and forth with the lawyers, with a number of different lawyers, talking about this and getting their advice. And we adjusted the contract in areas that were appropriate. And there was nothing concealed. It's just a part of the negotiations of a contract process. So as far as keeping anything from the board, there was nothing kept from the board. It's just a part of the negotiations process. And generally, that's what we do with our contractor.
Okay, Mr. Dorn and then Ms. Hardy.
Okay, thank you. As I've noted earlier, in previous meetings, that I really appreciate I think the care that the administration has taken in looking at it as this outside the box, but trying to check into a lot of the different bits and pieces of putting a van plan in place. And I think I will put our bus plan this year against any district that we do have consistent. And I've heard from principals, their attendance is better. They've really seen that with busing this year, and getting some input on the vans possibilities. They look at it as very, very positive for their students. I appreciate being able to ask the questions, kind of sort of as this comes to us for action tonight. You've answered sort of my questions that fall on that dotting the i's and crossing the t's. And I really appreciate that. So I will be voting for this and in support of it. And I think it is a good direction for us to go. But I do have my last question on this topic for tonight. Oh, it's dangerous for me to say, but it's true. If I understand this amendment, you know, we're adjusting the contract to have vans be used, but if at some point we find they're not meeting our needs or stuff like this, this is really just provides an option within this. It's not a commitment to this. And if things needed to be adjusted, you know, basically either we use the vans or we don't. If we use them, these are the parameters, the payment. If we don't, that's fine too. So it gives us an option. So that's my question, just to confirm that. And I'll, just before you give the answer to that, I just want to again say that I appreciate the diligence that I believe the administration has gone through to really look at the various sides of this topic and again, looking at a way that we can resolve a problem until we get enough bus drivers and enough buses on route and to help kids. So just if my understanding of the amendment is correct.
Yes, that is correct. There's no minimums to the vans. And so, you know, ideally we get to a point where we have enough drivers for full-time, you know, adequate number of routes and we move to 100% bus transportation. So your understanding is correct, Mr. Doran, no minimums. And if I could, President Sanderson, just address a couple of Ms. Hardy's concerns.
Go ahead, Mr. Doral.
Thank you. Thank you. The two main concerns coming from our interactions, as Ms. Moline mentioned, we've gone through many hours of consultation with attorneys on this topic. The two main concerns are safety and liability. And we've talked, I think, at length about the safety topic. We feel strongly that it's not an unsafe option. Again, our passenger vehicles as safe as school buses? No, we've never contended that. But is it a safe option compared to the alternatives that have been described? That we feel it's a very safe option. And then on the liability side, we've addressed the coverage, the substantial coverage that Durham carries for the liability of its activities. And then also another layer of the liability issue was when we were first exploring this option, we were looking at potentially having the drivers be district employees. So that created a lot of liability for the district, and we pivoted off that position in our consultation with the attorneys to make those drivers employed, hired, trained, and employed by Durham, as well as the vans being owned or leased by Durham. So that was really kind of the bigger part of the liability concern. And so we feel like we've addressed those concerns as well. So those are the two main topics that we've walked through with the attorneys, and we feel like we've come to a good spot and are recommending the approval of the contract. So.
Ms. Hardy still had a question.
Ms. Marati had brought up in our last meeting about dedicating a van to the SMART program to transport students. Did we ever find out any more information on making that available to them?
That could be an option, yes.
So we haven't vetted out the details of what that looked like, but we are committed to doing that. We just haven't done it yet. So committed to finding some options and making those options available to SMART students.
Is that in board questions? Don't call for the vote. Oh, that's right, Ms. Burnett.
As Mr. Doran had said, thank you guys. I appreciate all the thoroughness. Every time I have a question, Mr. DeGraw, you seem to answer about 7 of them. So I do appreciate that. As Ms. Hardy just asked about the STAR program, my newness, or SMART program, sorry, my newness to this, do we have any plans to possibly cover? I know we have a lot of BEST students who are attending over at Nordale and using those services. May we have possibly at some point something that may fit for that?
That would be something, I would be less confident committing to that area right now, but certainly something that we could look at as we're adding back more drivers and
Makes sense.
reinstating, a significant amount of additional service compared to today. So certainly something that we can have on our list and look at offering.
Makes sense. Thank you.
So if I might, one last comment just to put a bow on this. The purpose of the van plan was to supplement our lacking student transportation services. So how that unfolds is, yet to be seen, but the entire purpose of all of this pathway, this journey, all of this has been to provide a better service and to supplement what we already have. So, so I think we've put together a package that we can start with and then see where it grows. And, who knows what kind of things could develop out of these possibilities. So the big idea behind this whole journey was to support our student transportation services, and I think we put together a good package.
Ms. Richardson, get the vote?
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Colonel Alvarado?
Yes.
Colonel Surrey?
Yes.
Mr. Doran?
Yes.
Mrs. Burnett?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Hardy?
Yes.
Ms. Marati?
Yes.
Mrs. Sanderson?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Our next item is a new business, Resolution 2023-13, in appreciation for the dedication of professionalism of all district employees. The Fairbanks North Star Bureau of Education recognizes the effects, the responsiveness, and innovation of its educators and teachers, support staff, principals, and administrations in meeting the needs and strengths of students as they strive to succeed in life. Mr. Dorn, would you please read the resolution?
With pleasure. Do you want the motion first?
Oh, yes, please.
So move to approve Resolution 2023-13 in appreciation for the dedication and professionalism of all district employees.
Second.
Resolution 2023-13 in appreciation for the dedication and professionalism of all district staff. Whereas American Education Week is an opportune time to recognize the Fairbanks North Starborough School District educators, teachers, support staff, principals, and administrators have shown exemplary dedication and professionalism in meeting the unique challenges and opportunities throughout the past couple of years. And whereas the public education of students is an important part of our growing community, and whereas parents have entrusted this most important job to the educators and administrators of the Fairbanks North Starborough School District, and whereas education is an honorable profession that leads one to dedicate their life to mentoring and equipping the next generation to take their place in society. And whereas educators are lifelong learners who pursue strategies, pedagogy, methods, and means to accomplish their mission to assist students in learning. And whereas the educators within the Fairbanks North Starborough School District play an integral role in preparing every student to contribute to society as a competent, confident, caring, and curious citizen. And whereas district educators have a crucial role in supporting and advocating for all students. And whereas the past 2 years in particular have presented educators with unexpected challenges and situations. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Fairbanks North Starborough Board of Education recognizes the efforts, responsiveness, and innovations of its educators, teachers, support staff, principals, and administrators in meeting the needs and strengths of students as they strive for success in life. And be it further resolved that the Board of Education expresses its wholehearted appreciation to all those who work so diligently on behalf of the students and families of the Fairbanks North Star Borough.
Are there any public comments on this resolution? Seeing none, public comments are closed. Back to the board for any comment. Okay, Ms. Hardy? Mr. Dorn?
I just want to also say, like, I wholeheartedly support this as an educator myself. And one of the, lots of things we do on this board maybe aren't so great, but this is something where we get to cheer everybody on and say just how supportive and appreciated everyone is that does the work every day, showing up to school, working to help all of the students in our community. And I am thrilled to enthusiastically support them through this resolution.
Mr. Dorn?
Thank you. I'm glad to see this resolution before the board, and I think it says a lot, really, for staff. Lots of different issues and things that go, but really that appreciation for staff. And what struck me as I've gone through schools and you see what's going on and in classrooms, in the hallways, outside, crossing corners and things of that sort, the care that goes into the work of by our staff for their students. And it was interesting at the School Boards Association conference, state conference. One of the questions that was being asked of the board of directors on of the AASB was to just share the success, what our districts are doing that we're proud of to help welcome and include students and provide equity for them. And typically my mind would first go to, oh, well, what programs are we doing? What initiatives do we have going? And yes, I could have talked to that, but what was interesting to me, that struck me, was quickly, I stepped up beyond that to say, what we're doing this year is, it's not something our board is doing, it's not something that our district is doing as a formalized thing, it's what staff is doing. And it has struck me over the last couple of months, particularly as I've visited schools, the consistency. What teachers are saying is students are coming to us. Some have been in school regularly the last couple of years. Some it was kind of spotty, and some have not. But what my job is to figure out what they need right now, not to worry about what I would normally expect a student coming into this grade level or what I would normally expect a student coming into this course. So it's elementary, it's secondary, it's the same. But what do they need now? And how can I support them? And then what struck me is in totally separate conversations with principals saying, okay, what's going on at school and where do they hope to go and stuff. But you know what I'm really focusing on this year? How can I support teachers in their classroom as they support their students? And I've, as a member of this district, employee of this district for 23 years, being on the board and as a community member, I've always been proud of what this district does and what our staff does. But I have really been struck by the intentionality and thoughtfulness that all our educators, and I really stress that all our educators are doing to meet students where they are, to help them move as far as they can. And so I think there's a lot of meaning behind this resolution, but it's a real big thank you, and it was a great realization for me to experience during the state school boards conference, to say, that's something we can really say about our staff. That's the success. So just wanted to share that.
Any other comments from the board? Ms. Marati?
I just want to echo, I support this resolution. I think all district staff, our educators, are superheroes in disguise, all of them. And I'm in awe of everything that they do every day. So I appreciate this resolution, a chance for the board to recognize that. Thank you.
I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
No. We have to-
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's vote on the resolution. And let's vote on the, Ms.
Colonel
Richardson.
Surrey,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Colonel Alvarado,
Yes.
Mrs. Burnett,
Yes.
Mr. Doran,
Yes.
Ms. Marati,
Yes.
Mrs. Hardy,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Sanderson.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. Now we move to board final comments for tonight. Ms. Marati?
Thanks. I've asked for a few specific items, and I want to use my time to publicly request them and get them on the record. One is a work session to redirect our negotiation teams towards our new board's vision for negotiations. Another is a work session on why we're being told that the fund balance is said to be at zero balance when the board directed the one-time funds from the state of Alaska to that account specifically last year. Another is a work session on Dr. Ott's climate survey findings. I've asked for that previously. I'd love to see that happen. I understand that some board admin and stakeholders have limited time, so if that is a barrier, I suggest that we allow a Zoom option so as many people as possible can attend. Lastly, I don't see any meetings scheduled on superintendent search nor budget over the next 3 months. This concerns me because these are our biggest responsibilities. And I'm hoping that the board can gather, at least virtually, if needed, on these very important topics. Thank you.
Ms. Burnett?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to those who came. Thank you to the administration over there for answering all of our questions. I know we can be a bit tough sometimes. And also just remind everybody, Thanksgiving is coming next week. So just please enjoy time with your families and whatever it is that you're doing, however you celebrate. Everybody just have a happy Thanksgiving. That's all.
Ms. Hardy?
I just wanted to thank the Arctic Lake staff for welcoming me during their professional development day. I had a wonderful time doing ceramics with their staff, and also say that if there are other things going on in schools that you would like any of the board members or myself specifically to come. I know we're doing Denali School next week, helping at their Thanksgiving celebration. That is probably my favorite part of being a board member, so please feel free to email us, and I would love to attend and be out in more of the schools.
Ms. Smith?
Since Ms. Matheson isn't here, I'll say it this time. Wrestling and hockey, again, they're in full swing. There's a huge wrestling tournament in Palmer this weekend. It's the Lancer Smith tournament. It happens every year, and it is one of my favorite things to watch. In honor of, I think it's Teacher Appreciation Week, pretty sure, and this resolution, I really encourage all students and parents to go out and just really tell staff and teachers how much you appreciate them, because I know that they appreciate to hear that you appreciate them. We had our Region 6 meeting today with all of our with a bunch of students from around the district, and I got to talk to them about our superintendent search. And I have a phone call with some people tomorrow, and I'm very much looking forward to telling them about what we think our superintendent should be like. And I also, I think it was last week, attended the YLI Youth Conference for the ASB, and it was really interesting to hear about all the other districts' issues in their own district and hear from the student perspectives and the board perspectives from those districts. And it was just really interesting thing, and I highly recommend that other people should go next time. And I think there's one in January, and I talked to kids about that. So thank you.
Way to go, Ms. Smith. So just for the community listening and for the board, thank you for the board work. For us, our superintendent searches and the information, we are vastly putting the information that we are being required to put every day. We just finished a few things today that are coming out so that our stakeholders will have what they need to, we can gather the information for them. So as we look at the calendar and get requests and have conversations with Ray and Associates, we are implementing those things that are being put to us. And if I reach out, if I need help or clarity, but that's why I was meeting with Vice President Doran and with Chief Operator Administrator Ms. Meline, so that we are staying on top of this and addressing it as best I know how. So I don't believe that any deadlines have been missed. I think we're right where we need to be. I looked at the calendar today to see what was being, where we were at, and I think we're spot on. So I'll keep moving forward with the emails and the conversations and the team building that we're doing as we move forward with this to make the information accessible as soon as possible. And you can always ask. Mr. Doran?
Thank you. I just wanted to get on the list for the comments. Two things. One is regarding the resolution through the president, if that could be sent out to all staff so that they receive that this week, American Education Week. That'd be a nice message from the board. And then I just wanted to report in terms of the value of attending the state conference for the Alaska Association of School Boards. It was really good. I mean, the trainings, I learned bits and pieces that were helpful, got me thinking, sometimes maybe changing my thinking, sometimes refining it and enhancing it, sometimes affirming it. So that's always a good combination when you leave a meeting and you say, oh, wait a minute, I'm taking a couple things away. But also that opportunity to talk with board members from throughout the state, find the things that we have very much in common. And I think that was one of the things, and really, Mrs. Smith alluded to it in our work session last night too, that we are all in this together in terms of the budget, funding our need for staff throughout the state. It's not any one district. And I know a couple of board members from various districts and stuff, and especially it struck me with some of the big districts really said, oh, we have a lot in common with the rural districts, and we're in this together. We're on the same boat. And if we don't work together, we will not benefit our kids. So the message really was coming together, being unified in our message for the benefit of students throughout our state, and we share those students on a regular basis. So I think that was one of my big takeaways from this year's conference, was really that sense that we really, as school boards, need to actively advocate and stand up for our students and our educators. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to take part in that training.
Ms. Smith?
Okay, I changed my mind. Mr. Dorn, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I will say, at the conference, you really are exposed to just such a wide variety of humans. And I sat at a round table with bunch of people, and a couple of them were from Juneau, Kenai. They have pretty big districts. And the students that sat with me were not from big districts. One was from Hooper Bay, and one was from Southwest, one of the Southwest districts. And when we started talking about what our biggest problems are or what we're doing, I felt like a lady who was talking about how poorly cooked their filet mignon was. And talking to these students, it really drove home the fact that we do need a lot, and we don't need to bring our district down in order for all of us to be equal. We need to, as a state, sincerely address the utterly appalling situation in our rural districts. And the funding has got to come through for those places. Students and the people in Fairbanks really need to understand that when we're advocating for money for education, for a BSA increase, it is not just for Fairbanks so that we can do more fancy things. The rising tide is helping everyone. It's helping my student who sat with me from Hooper Bay to have better heat in their school building and to not have holes in their teacher housing so that maybe they could have one teacher stay for more than a month in their school. So when we start talking about our request for funding, we're not just talking about money for Fairbanks. We're talking about money for education for every student in all of Alaska. So I know this is going to be a long, hard conversation, but we have to keep it eyes on the most needy people in our community, and raising up education funding for us is also raising it for everyone else.
And I would have to piggyback on those comments. I really didn't want to say anything else, but I have two things. One, when I had talked to Miss Olivia over there, she was representing and going down. And then I had talked to Mr. Barnark about our student reps and who would be going. He referred me to somebody. So I just want to say, for a big district, our youth representation was Miss Smith, who did an excellent job. But I was disappointed that we did not have more students. Our students are doing phenomenal things, and I don't know what the connection piece is, so of how we get to select or how they're selected to go to this training. But it's something I would like for us to look into, because the kids, what they were able to participate in and be exposed to was just phenomenal. And as Ms. Smith said about, I was on the NEA board for 5 years. And when we went to DA, we always argued about rural and urban, rural and urban. And, when they talked about housing, some of us listened and some of us didn't listen. But when you have students sitting at your table saying to you, this is why housing is important to us. I love my counselor. My counselor has only been with us 1 year, but they won't be staying with us because they don't have anywhere to live. And when they say things like, what you don't understand is families have families on top of families living in one house, and some things that are occurring are harming our students, and then they don't have a counselor to go to school and talk about it because that counselor is no longer there. And one young lady whose mom is in Buckland, she's just a new administrator there, reached out to me, and I've been communicating with her, is that if any way we can help here in Fairbanks or to do some sort of, initiative or something to help her out would be great. But I was left really weighted down when I left that conversation with those young people, because it really became real to me what they're up against and how real it is for their economic survival, their academic survival, and their personal safety. So I'm very thankful for what we do and what we have here. and we can partner up. And I think Ms. Smith is correct. We're going to have to advocate what is education going to really look like and what is it going to really cost. Thank you tonight, board, for your work, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.